Happy to see us here for our July session. And let me make sure I just want to make sure we do have Scott because I'm looking across. Not yet? Evelyn?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Let me make sure we don't. All right, well, I'll just get us going and we will figure out how to make that work. So hope everybody's doing great. So I'm just gonna have a little bit of fun for a second. So here's where I was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you find me?
Third from the left.
With the white hat, yeah.
There he is right there with the white hat.
Okay, yeah.
So I was in Wyoming at a dude ranch with this set of characters. Let me tell you, going out to a dude ranch with 11 other guys to ride horses for a week and do some traipsing around in the mountain was fantastic. But it was quite a crew and a great time.
I think we saw that movie when we were about 12 years old.
What was it called?
And he had the Shorty had the one thing. What was it called? City Slickers.
City Slickers, exactly.
City Slickers. There we go. That is amazing. I literally didn't thought that was a photograph. I mean a piece of artwork. But I forgot you telling me this.
Well, I will admit to the guy on the second guy from the right, his horse somehow was out of frame. And a friend of mine, I sent him the picture and I didn't know he was this photo expert. So he moved the horse back and got him kind of sitting in the right spot. So, but it was a blast. So just wanted to share that with you guys as we get going. So welcome. So here's what we're going to do tonight. Short kickoff, because I want to make sure we give Scott plenty of time. Our guest speaker, Scott McMichael, is on. He will introduce himself to you in the context of his remarks and comments tonight. And then we'll talk about whether we actually go into PBOTs. I think I've got a little pressure, we'll see, on if we do PBOTs and pitches tonight. That's fine, we'll figure it out. And then we have the pleasure of having John back with us. If you guys remember, John did one of our earlier sessions. He's going to really focus us in on change management tonight, which is going to be the bulk of our discussion. So, and then we'll get queued up for August. And amazingly enough, we only got 2 more months, and but I think we've done some great work, and you guys have been very engaged. And welcome to Evelyn Richards, who's with us, pinch hitting tonight, and will be going forward with us as Babita and are up in somewhere in Canada. I think they're working. I'm not sure. I think they're working, so it's a good thing. All right, so with no further ado. Scott, I think you've got some slides. I think we're making you co-host so you can actually share. And guys, please give a warm welcome to Scott McMichael. And let me stop sharing so Scott can actually get going. There we go. Awesome.
How are we doing so far?
Very well.
All right. Well, thanks, Everett, for hosting tonight and also getting me prepped last week on tonight's conversation. I know you all know each other and I don't, but we won't take the time to do a bunch of introductions. What I told Everett is when Dr. Loretta Daniels asked me to do something, I say yes and then figure out the details. So if you have a relationship with Dr. Daniels, you'll understand exactly what I mean. But I have been a part of TAG in many ways over the last decade, but most recently joined the board of advisors over the last year or so, and had an opportunity to chair the Georgia Technology Summit in part this past year, and will do so in 2026. And here's kind of the basics around that. I mean, my connection to TAG, as you guys now have a connection to TAG, is my sort of season 1 with TAG was about technical community, about making those resources available to team members I was working alongside. Chapter 2 of TAG has been much more about the sort of overwhelming amount of economic impact I think that that group can have as a consortia, as a collective, and the way in which they go to market to really prepare the next level workforce and give us opportunities, not just within our own organizations, but now cross organizations to get together, whether you're a part of Home Depot or Scientific Games or some or City of Atlanta or some other organization that you guys come from. I think that's just a tremendous value. And I'm a native Georgian. And so the idea that I spend my time in Technology Association of Georgia, it just made sense to me. My current role these days is Managing Director North America for Improving. Improving is a software technology organization. We do application modernization, AI solutions, data strategies. We've grown to about 2,000 technology consultants and software engineers over the last 5 years, and that includes 17 business units across US and Canada, as well as Mexico, Chile, Argentina, and India. I say that not as an infomercial for tonight's conversation. I say it as whether I want to be in change management or not, I am in change management every single day. And that's kind of from which, so tonight's update is like a survivor's talk about change management and change leadership. Maybe a little bit about style and what I think has worked well for us, not as an academic, a best practices guy, but as a guy who's learning as we go. Ended up landing on these 5 topics. This is my first time doing a talk around change management. So I had to kind of start getting my thoughts together. Bear with me. I'll be better this time next year. But culture of change, a model for change, the sound of change, and then a couple of big scenarios around managing change in tech and managing change in our own business model. So far, so good, Everett. Everything coming through okay? Transitions are keeping up and all that kind of stuff. When I think about change, there's a great inspirational video. I'm not going to share it here tonight. Sometimes it doesn't work that great over Zoom, but let me encourage you to look this up. 212 Degrees inspirational video. And I literally think it exemplifies in sort of every analogical way what we mean about change and the power of change. So what is the difference in water at 211 degrees and 212 degrees? I mean, think about that for just a second. 211 degrees is pretty hot water, but at 212 degrees, it turns into something completely different, creates the steam power that will send a locomotive full of all, of 1,000 cars down a railroad track. There's a physical change state that goes on. Now you've got a new source of energy. If you don't turn it up to 212 degrees, you will just be watching a hot pot of water on the stove, right? I think that's a powerful metaphor, and they do a much better job of it in their own little 2-minute video if you ever get a chance to watch it. So here's my philosophy around culture of change, and really the imperative that is culture of change. Change is happening every day. I am, in fact, 1 day older than I was yesterday, and I have, in fact, paid taxes today. These things are inevitable. Change is good. Change is constant. Change is the momentum that we need for business to pivot, for business to meet the market, to respond to whatever is happening out there, whether it be tariff or whether it be weather or global climate. Change has got to be built into what we do every day. I remember our CEO when we were sort of leaving phase 1 of improving and moving into phase 2 of improving. Phase 1 had been pre-financial investment, pre-private equity, so they could do whatever they wanted to do. They were really just a combination of 6 different businesses that had come together under one brand, but they had no financial stakeholder yet. And so when we came along, we were the first group in Atlanta in 2019 that was after that change or after that investment that had occurred. And I remember the CEO going, "Hey guys, get ready for change." And I thought, get ready for change? I thought you guys were always in change. You're consultants, for goodness sakes. Everything changes every 72 hours. But I remember that this was a modus operandi where Dallas had been the hub of literally everything. And there were all these other little nodes. Well, they weren't the biggest, most revenue generating organization anymore. Atlanta was. That was one of those changes. We knew we were going on a growth trajectory. We knew we had hundreds of millions of dollars backing us that wanted us to be something totally new and different. It was no longer going to be this entrepreneurship anymore. And so, what if everybody doesn't like that flavor of change? This pictorial, again, is not an advertisement, but gives you an idea of where we started just in 2019 with one office in Canada and the rest in the US, and how all of a sudden you're global, multi-hemisphere. Philosophies have to change, like you're always working at our office or at the client's office. All clients are local. Our physical presence in the office is significant to who we are. My, oh my, how that has changed, right? Globally for us, but also post-pandemic, it's just different. This change is coming down the track.
Mm-hmm.
So to have a culture of change, I can't sort of just tolerate compliance, acceptance. I accept it, whether I like it or not. Change. I mean, like what? So, okay, so you're just going to add step 6B into your process, and that's your idea of change? I don't know if that's good enough for me. This is a culture of change. This is change leadership. Let's get after it. I need you to be engaged in where we're headed. Now, here's the thing. How people respond to change is the human condition. I don't expect them to embrace change the way I embrace change. I believe was born to be a change leader, to live into change. My entire career has been web-based. So I've been in software technology for just a little over 30 years now. My entire career has been web-based. So people younger than me with 25 years careers haven't always been in web, right? They came from COBOL and AS400 world. I only know web. And web-based technology has always been able to change a lot faster, pivot on the dime. In fact, my mother told me this weekend, too much change. I am tired of my software updating on my phone every damn week. And I said, this is what we're living with, Mom. Like she's 84. She don't want any change. Can I turn off the change? And I'm like, nope. We deploy software on a nightly basis to that little phone of yours. You are now a part of change. My mom doesn't want any of that change. To be honest with you, I don't want my phone updating every night either. I'm just like, I don't know that it is more secure when I wake up in the morning and it's still rebooting. But what I do know is that whether you're a subscriber to Myers-Briggs, whether you're a subscriber to the DISC model, whatever your personality profile methodology is that you prescribe to, it could be your what do you call it when you're born under the stars? Capricorn. Zodiac could be your way of thinking about how people are organized. But there are at least these 6 types of people when reacting to change. We know this about the change curve that maybe you guys have studied, the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, and then the late majority, the late adopters, and then the diehards. We're always going to be managing and dealing with this and as a part of how we do change. And what I'm here to say is it's okay. If everybody were jumping in change like me, like I wouldn't have a secret spaghetti recipe that's been passed down for 40 years. I'd keep changing the damn thing. Some tradition and classic and operational and maybe even resistance or methodology around holding on and making sure we're changing for the right reasons. That's a good and right personality in the room. It just ain't who I am. But we value these different responses to change. In the slide here, I talk about the consultant mindset versus the operations mindset, another way of exemplifying the point. Like I said, I've been in software development, which feels like change management and web-based solutions my entire career. We've been trying to speed up release cycles for 30 years. Maybe now I'm trying to slow them down. But that consulting kind of mindset was always leaning into the latest technology, the newest technology, the best way to get media and heavy weighted assets distributed over these little, network pipes. And now we got a lot of that worked out, and we can watch content all over the world on that mobile phone. What a great advent of technology change. But at the same time, somebody's got to be weighing down that operational, watching the green flashing lights, making sure there's a steady state. So change may come in a different package for an operator's mindset. I had some interns who were exiting at the end of their semester. Now it may be 10 years ago. And we were just sort of post-mortem out briefing, what they had experienced in their first experience with a consulting organization like ours. And I remember first, the consultant one, whose name escapes my mind, she says, I'll tell you what, I kind of hate the idea of being a part of a consulting organization. I'm like, well, it's important you learn what you do like and learn what you hate, I guess, when you're 19. And she said, I thought for me, what I wanted to do with my degree and with my technology experience is I wanted to be the knowledge base, the come to one and only source. Like she wanted to etch in stone that training guide, have a set of rules and order that she could follow. And I said, it's perfect. There's lots of room in the business that you're pursuing in operations. And literally before I could get that out of my mouth, intern number 2, Justin Barnett, is laughing his head off and going, this really is kind of a compelling thing. I loved what I did this summer because I was learning something new every week, if not every single day. And my body was craving it. And I said, you may be like me, Justin. I like to eat change management on my cornflakes in the morning, but not everybody likes cornflakes. I think that's what I would say about a culture of change. There is an empathy to it, right? It doesn't mean you don't have to have the leader of it, but there's absolutely an empathy to it. And there's a reason why we have these staunch late adopters, these diehards that keep us grounded on the right kind of change and the right pace for change. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about this model for change and then make sure I've got a chance for you guys to provide feedback. I am not an expert in Kotter's 8-step change model, but I am now. I've become an expert. I've spent 45 minutes with it, and I liked it. I had not seen this before, and I'm glad to have been introduced to it by this cohort. But I will tell you this, A model for change, that's a very carefully chosen word. It's like a platform, a foundation, a set of pillars. It is Kotter's 8-step change model. It is not a procedure. A procedure is a root canal. Nobody wants a procedure. But a model we need. A model is at the process level, not at the procedure level. And I believe that when you force change through the needle, the eye of the needle that is procedure, you may get compliance because you have the authority to do so, but you will not get good change. That is my biggest, largest, if not lessons learned. It's the thing that I preach over and over again when sometimes someone gets fed up in finance's office or how we're doing CRM and they go, well, this is just the way it's going to be, can absolutely be your authoritative process. But I don't think that gets you the best change. So model, I like it. For me, I loved create urgency. I love that that's a part of this model. I think that is often missing. And is that sort of you missed the kickoff step or something. And so I love that idea of a clear, powerful narrative that captures the need for change, something about the why that sets the direction and sets a pace for change, helps us understand the timing and that the milestones are going to come and that we are going to implement change XYZ. So I think that's a brilliant part of this model. And I also loved number 5, empower others to act. I gravitated to. If not, if it is just that authoritative change, the change is we're moving from orange to green as our company color. The president said so, and marketing has implemented it, and that's the way it's going to be. Doesn't empower others to act, respond, to pick up the new marketing template, to get excited about the new brand, to wear the new colored t-shirt. So in order for sustainable change to happen, I use the term scaffolding. I need to make sure that in the organization of change, we know where our allies are. We even know where our resistors are, and that we're amplifying that change throughout that entire scaffolding. There is no top-down change to me that is sustainable change. Whoop. I'll pause right here for just a second because I've been preaching, Everett. And I get a hand raised before we go on in change management. Sometimes it's required.
Yes, it
Loud music, games, little preacher voice.
God, you sound like the change God.
is. I had to change.
A
Bring
little
it.
comedy
Bring it.
never hurt. The change mascot. You know, you may have to put on a clown wig to get change to happen. Are there any comments, disagreements, or hallelujahs so far as we think about change in the real
Yeah.
world?
Thoughts, questions, etc., guys.
You'll get a hallelujah from me.
All right. Down front.
Second
I
that.
was just- Sorry, I was just gonna say, I do like this model. I like this framework. We've been talking about change management a fair amount lately. I think the book is called Change. It's like a Dan Heath book or something like that. We've recently read it. But I like this because it touches on a lot, like just a bit more detail of each of the different levers to pull on and the importance of them. I actually think it's a really good model.
AJ, I like what you said there. I think we sometimes think change is 3 steps or 4. And this lets us kind of concentrate on all 8. So yeah, I like it.
I guess I'm a little curious, Scott, to know, like, how has it been successful with organizations that may have some of these categories, like some of the people in these categories heavily weighted? Like, I think about my organization, heavy change all the time.
Mhm.
Not everybody can jam with that, right? So they have turnover, and it's like, what's happening? Why aren't people sticking? So what have you seen as being successful in balancing out the types of groups here needed?
Great question.
So, I have an answer to that. I don't know that it's everybody's answer.
Okay.
But in our case, I'm going to throw something in chat here. We kind of have this mantra that we start local. When we acquire a company, we do not throw a wrecking ball through it. We do not dismantle it and reorganize it. Now that has some strengths and weaknesses. I'm not suggesting that that's the only way, but that is our intended approach. We leave kind of the special sauce together. And so because that's the case, you might leave some change resistors in place as well. They already have done something successful that caused us to want to acquire them. We've chosen, instead of dissecting that, we let them begin, we let them start locally. We ask them to then think nationally across their peer groups that they're already organized with, both in delivery leadership and sales leadership, but then to ultimately act globally. That's the hardest part for us right now, because maybe these local businesses operated across 4 states and they were very physically present and always in your face, and there's no language barrier or time zone difference. And so getting from local to global is hard. Here's probably what actually happens is we probably get the 30%, the 50% to change and evolve with us. And we're probably leaving some local operations and delivery behind.
Mhm.
And we're accepting of that fact, because maybe I'd rather have them stable, delivering great services locally than to leave.
Yeah.
So not everybody is on the change bus when we're driving down the street is our reality.
Well, Scott, I'm going to add to that because from my Coca-Cola days, guys, we learned the hard way that we would go acquire various smaller brands and we would Cokeize them very quickly. And in most cases, we would kill them by Cokeizing them. What was a very successful small brand, in a lot of cases, we needed to learn from them, which is kind of Scott's point. We needed to learn from them versus immediately dropping all of our systems and changing them dramatically. We needed to kind of take it slow and see what could we learn versus immediately, pumping red fluid into them.
That's exactly why we've chosen the other way. Now it has some concerns, but it definitely, we don't detonate any of the revenue value that they bring to the table or cultural value. The mantra that I will carry to them and that will come back in various cultural ways is I will say, guys, the soup is not cooked around here. We would not have acquired you if we didn't think you didn't bring some kind of unique, special ingredient to this soup. And then by the time it gets back to me, it turned into a stew or a ragu or a casserole. I don't give a damn. That as long as we understand that we are still adding to, and that this is our group assignment. Again, this is about a philosophy. It's about one change leader's approach. Now, my boss is a very charismatic guy. I report to the CEO. He's the boss and it's his company and he decided to acquire you. I'll be honest with you. He can be a bit hierarchical in nature. He's very charming and charismatic about it, but it's sort of hierarchical, militaristic sometimes. Get on board. And I say, that's great, but getting on board leaves too much to chance about these unique service offerings, these great capabilities, these benefits that we might be able to fold into our business. So that's my take as an integrator of these companies.
Hey, Scott,
Awesome.
I just have one comment. You went from number 1 to 5 being the best one that you like. I kind of like number 4. And I see this as one of the areas of where a lot of change fails. It's communicating the vision, right? Because if you communicate the vision properly, and instill with people that where we're at and where we're going is a better place. Then you get that acceptance and that following, and it actually moves the bar, and people are willing to move with you because they know you're going to take them to a better situation than where you're at today. So I'm not hating on your 5. In fact, I think all 8 of them are relevant. I just see number 4 as one of the pivotal places that I see a lot of times.
Once again,
It's not
uh,
done correctly.
cannot disagree that that gets skipped over. Now I will say this, just as a matter of debate, because I was talking to someone today who's been given a part-time role around formalizing some of our communication, and her approach is very, very good and very, very consultative and academic. And I said, but what if the problem is not communicating the vision, to use this model, but the ears to hear? Do I have to wait till everybody's listening? I'm sure I communicated the vision 3 times. Not all the ears are choosing to hear. What are we going to do with those folks? Now, I think that can fit into number 4, is how do we communicate locally? How do we communicate nationally? How do we communicate globally? How do we communicate again with our advocates, through our advocates? But that's that we've been struggling sometimes with what we don't think is actually an encode, but a decode problem in communicate. So probably makes that even more important, doesn't it, Stephen?
I was going to say the same
Gotta
thing.
know your audience for sure.
Yeah.
All right, good discussion. I'm glad we took a little pause in the action. Let's keep rocking. The sound of change. Do you think that change leadership has a sound to it? I've already kind of alluded to this, a tone. In a book that I'll reference in a little bit, he uses both of these phrases. There are no recipes for change. You've heard me talk about that. Avoid checklist mentality. For example, all employees will be back in the office 4 days per week, effective August 1st. We've seen organizations mess up this change communication, even when I think in many cases their intentions were very good ones. But that's a statement of policy that does not get 5,000 UPS employees in Atlanta very excited about that change.
Do that.
Taking a different tone, our best moments happen in small group settings. We've worked real hard to redesign our organizations to be collaborative workspaces so that you can be together. Gives me more of that why and that vision. It makes me sensitive to culture of change. It makes me sensitive to things that I love about my company and the things that I don't want to mess up just because I'm back into a back to the office or return to office kind of mode. I think this example helps us to think about, let's be cognizant about the tone of change so that we get the most impact, the most benefit out of the change that we're leading. Ooh, if anybody chats.
Will do. It's got you on mute.
Got you muted yourself.
I muted myself. I got screens going everywhere on this side. Managing change in technology. AI is upon us. Like I hear this every single day in the business that I get to run, both internally and among clients and partners. But we do ask ourselves, is this construct any different than the introduction of the PC, which some of us can remember, the introduction of the web, the wave I told you that I rode, how impactful mobile has become, or even for many of my clients, the advent of the cloud was substantial in how they could now engage in enterprise technology. Now, this is more of a rhetorical question, but we look at it on a change curve as consultants, and it looks a lot like these kinds of changes. In fact, I'm not sure that it's even as large as that introduction of the PC size change. AI as an argument doesn't give us the critical thinking or the human reasoning like these other tools did not, although maybe some think it will one day. Right now, I can't even get it to call the right Pizza Hut half the time to get my pizza on Saturday afternoon. So we got plenty of room for how this moves forward. That said, in a culture of change, we must, this is an imperative, embrace that this change is moving, these changes are happening. We should be proactive. We should be upskilling. We should figure out how to get to some efficiency and some effectiveness as those tools are introduced so that someone doesn't have to dictate change to us. No different than moving from the abacus to the adding machine to the scientific calculator to where we are today. Now, I will have to say, when I asked my assistant to help me with some images, she said, "What is an abacus?" So if I know y'all think I'm 32, but evidently I'm not. Because we had these in every classroom when I was growing up. So I just assumed we still had an abacus. And my mom was wicked on the adding machine growing up as well. But nonetheless, I guess these images are outdated. But I just think about applying this same methodology, this change culture rather, to how we're experiencing or how we have experienced change in technology. Change in business model. I've alluded to this some in the earlier conversations, managing local, thinking national, acting globally. I would say for the better part of my career, I've thought more in terms of this tie and tack change. Now, I'm not a sailor, but let me try to explain what I mean. Tie and tack is, we know that we're going to try to take this sailboat or this Hobie Cat or whatever from point A to over there. We know the destination. It's right over there. It's that island. It's the other side of the lake or whatever. But to get there, I will need the power of the wind. So I'll have to tack into the wind, and then I'll tie off that sail for a moment while the wind pushes into that sail and moves me in that direction. It is most likely that I will not be able to go in a straight line. In fact, it's almost inevitable that I will not go in any kind of straight line. I will tie and I will tack. I will have to, in order to get straight, I'm going to have to go back and forth and aim my way in to that spot on the other side. And so I call this sort of tie and tack change. Or think about it a different way. If you were in a paddle boat, you've got a rudder. You're ruddering, you're going to get there eventually. It may not be the most straight line or the most powerful motor that's getting you there. Sometimes change takes a little more time. And I would say that that's how very often I got to the change result I wanted to get, was to tie and to tack, to bob and to weave, to move along, to incorporate new ideas. Sometimes we don't have time for that, and sometimes it doesn't get us the result we need. And so I was introduced to this book just 3 years ago, and it just kind of hit me over the head when it was like, but what about deep change? I was like, ooh, for a guy who likes change, maybe I wasn't thinking about how deep it could go. It is the move from being reactive to proactive. It is about growing when it is tempting to surrender. That's a quote from Quinn. Do y'all have any Quinn in the curriculum, Everett?
Well, we talk about some of the pieces of this for sure.
Okay. He was new to me, and this field guide and accompanying book, they base it on like 8 different movies that you watch and change that occurred in the movies. And then so it gives it a real engaging kind of an approach. But it really was what we thought we needed as a leadership team, because we had too much going on for everything to be a little bit tie and tack. I said earlier, hey, don't worry, Keisha. The soup's not cooked. We're gonna put a little bit of your mama's recipe in here as well. But that may be a little bit of tie and tack. That's incorporating, that's pivoting, that's everybody getting around, a big old hug it out. We may not always have that opportunity. Deep change is a fundamentally different process because it requires people to develop new expectations. It requires them to move to a new set of assumptions. I actually just got chills because of how I think impactful that is. For sometimes we got to go deep. This service offering is going away. This service offering is now going to be this way. This organization is not going to exist separately anymore. It's not going to be in that incorporative kind of approach. We're going to have to go Coca-Cola on them and go deep change.
Bingo. Gotcha.
So what advice would you give me about a culture of change? Anyone? Anyone? Are you ready for the culture of change? Are you sprinkling it on your cornflakes?
Well, I definitely work in operations.
Wayne, do you love me or do you hate me? Tell the honest truth.
Oh, I love you.
You're just not going to change.
No, I'll change. I just work in operations. I just don't eat it. I just don't eat it on my cornflakes. In fact, I've led a change in our putting Oracle into our organization. Not the whole thing, but one piece of it. And yeah, I was about checklists and rules and numbers and things, but really it turned into managing people's feelings around it.
And is that exhausting or what?
Oh yeah.
Were you able to create the right kind of urgency to get the timeline result that your team wanted in that change?
I think so. You know, I wasn't really, it was about 10 years ago. So I was pretty fresh in business in the industry, and I learned a lot from that. I'd definitely say I'd do it differently this time if I did it again 10 years later, but there's nothing like the learning journey.
No.
So I know I didn't answer your question, but
No. I think you represent a very important perspective, is that guys can come in and we might sound a little brash because we're not counting all the servers. We're not understanding all the data, and there's an operational component to change. Any other advice for improving from your collective experience?
Inevitable.
I thought I would turn it around on him right at the very end.
No, all good.
who's paying attention?
Yeah, you don't change, you cease to exist, in my mind, right? So you have to change. I mean, I look back, I spent a lot of time in IBM, and we used to go out with the three-piece suits, the white shirts and the tie, and I was an engineer, every service call that we went to, that's the way we dressed, we performed, that's the style that we brought to the table, right? As technology changed and you went from mainframes down to intermediates to mid-range and down to desktops, right? That had to change because people that are using desktops are not going to be significantly moved by a guy walking around with a suit and tie and a white shirt, right? And so we had to change our delivery model so that we started, for example, to send people out with vans to swap out a monitor or a keyboard or a printer. But we didn't have to send a person in a suit and tie to go do that. And if we continued to send a suit and tie, I don't think IBM would exist today. So we had to change and evolve to still be competitive in today's world, because the world moved to a commodity versus a mainframe.
Bingo. Great point. Well, the only other add I'll make is this, because you asked about the book, and that's Quinn. So we use as a basis for this course the competing values framework, which really sets people into their respective quadrants. And what you're getting at is the right quadrant, which is all about create. The green quadrant is people who love change. And the opposite quadrant is folks who are like, oh my God, please don't change anything. We just got this set. So that's the creative tension. And you said it earlier, it's about having empathy for where people are, no matter where they are in their respective perspective. But then figuring out how do they all get aligned on the change? Not in agreement, because it's not about agreement, it's about alignment. All right. Any others as we move towards Scott Rapid? All right.
Well, thank you guys for the discussion tonight, the opportunity to kind of butt in here and share some lessons from the field. But we'll keep at it out here and improving. And thank you, cohort, for engaging with me. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Scott.
much, Scott.
Hey, Wayne's got a baseball game to watch here in the next couple of hours. Don't keep him too long.
I'm going.
Oh, nice. Nice. Enjoy.
Yeah.
See y'all.
Bye, Scott.
All right. Well, excellent. Hopefully you guys found that helpful and engaging. We tried to have Scott just share some kind of views from the field in that respect. So let me do a quick check-in, because obviously we don't have everybody tonight. We've got most everybody. And I had talked about and sent out a note about doing our pitches again tonight. I can tell you guys are so excited to do that you can't see straight. So I know how to read a room. So let me make this suggestion. There was one team that didn't go last time. Which team was that? And don't worry, that team. I'm not gonna, put you on the spot, but which team didn't go?
That was our team, team 1.
Team 1. Okay, Tracy, Dustin, okay. Are you guys in good shape? Or do you feel like you want to practice tonight?
Sam, Bianca, how do y'all feel?
I really feel like we're in really good shape. I mean, I'm okay with practicing. We actually practiced yesterday because we technically, pitched it yesterday and we got some really good feedback.
Oh, you did?
We haven't had a chance to implement any of that yet. And so maybe too soon to present to the group. What are y'all? That's my understanding. What are y'all's thoughts?
I'm good either way. So I think do we have anybody, Everett, from previous tags cohorts with us this time?
I was looking, and that's the question I sent to Evelyn just to check, because I'm trying to see everybody on screen. I actually don't think that we do.
I say bring it on.
I couldn't see who said, oh, that was Wayne.
Yeah.
Somebody
The constant
not
joker.
in the group. Somebody not in the group.
I want to hear it.
Here's where I'm going for a couple of reasons. One, first off, I want to make sure we give John ample time, because I think what he's going to talk through and coming right off of what Scott was talking about, I think these things are going to tie in very well together. At the same time, I wanted to make sure that folks were comfortable, but here's the reality. August is going to be fully a pitch session. We are going to pitch again in August, all 4 teams, and we're going to kind of grind it down to make sure we're set then for September, when you will actually make your pitch to City of Refuge. And so with the fact that team 1, you guys kind of did your thing yesterday, got some feedback and want to make some edits, etc. Fantastic. So let's just plan on, let's plan on then August. You are actually, I'm going to say you will be first up when we get to August session. So what I'd like to do, I want to give you just a couple of brief things in regards to your pitches. Take about maybe 5 minutes just to give you some more information, some context, and then I want to hand it over and let John drive us on the change management topic. Is that fair? Let me ask this question. Are we good, or do we need a break for 5? I'm checking. I see shaking heads. No? All right. I always like to check, fluid adjustments, that type of thing. All right, let me get my
I heard a younger person say a bio break. It's pretty good.
For some reason, my window went away here. 1 second. Here we go. Back up there. There. Looks like it flipped on me, didn't it? Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Time. All right. Now we got it right. Since I can't see. So I just wanted to make a couple of quick points about our practice, about our pitches.
We're still seeing your notes slide.
You are.
Edward.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Let's swap displays. Let's swap.
There you go.
Oh, we got it right. It flipped screens on me totally. That's what happened. All right, now you guys don't see yourselves, right? Right?
Nope. Right hand
We're good.
side, but we see your.
We're-
Yeah,
we're
we're good.
seeing
We see your screen. Yeah.
I see the presentation.
Okay, that's what I need. All right. So just a couple of things I want to reference here. As you think about your pitches, once again, leadership comes with a microphone. So I want you really focused on what does my audience currently think? So when you're speaking to City of Refuge, think about what is it that's already going on for them? Again, it walks right down the path of change because you're going to be talking to them about changing something. So what do they already think? What do you want them to think? How do you want them to get excited about this idea that you're bringing forward for them? What's the single most persuasive part of the idea, no matter what the size and context of it is? What's the thing that is really going to hit home for them that's going to be valuable for them? And what do you want them to do? In a lot of cases, I believe, based on what you guys have talked about, you want them to change something that they're already doing to make it hopefully better, okay? So that's that leadership comes with a microphone. The second piece, and we referenced this last time, is really I want you to take hold of this idea of leading with a personal story. Really setting up in that first few minutes, how do you draw them in with a personal story? And that personal story should effectively introduce the subject because it builds trust and likability. And I remind you, it's best if your personal story is about you versus a personal story about someone else. So I can tell a story about Keisha. Wow, this is what impacted Keisha. This is this was what was going on. However, if I talk about me, it just brings it closer to home. Okay, so just bear that in mind as you think about it. And this last piece is don't give a speech, solve a problem. Be very focused on this is the issue. This thing I'm offering is a way to solve it. So what I'm saying is don't spend a lot of time getting into the weeds of data. You might need to give some snippets, but really what's the problem that this solution solves for them and addresses what they're trying to accomplish. Okay? And your proposed solution to the change issue or opportunity, whatever it is, don't give a speech. All right, so just wanted to give you those things just as a reminder as you continue to work on your pitches. And I know you guys will do a great job. So I'm gonna stop there and move us forward to John.
You mind if I share my screen?
Not at all. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I don't use Zoom all the time, so bear with me. I'm just making sure I'm doing I'm doing this right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, first of all, it's nice to see everybody again. And forgive me because I don't know that I'm going to remember everybody's names. So So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that your names are showing up on the screen here. Let me just do one thing here so I can get more of you visible to me. Wonderful. Okay. So I'm here to talk to you about managing change. So we heard a lot of things from, oh my gosh, his name
Scott.
just went on, Scott?
Mhm.
Man, my memory's going bad. We heard a lot of really great things from Scott, right? And great perspective, and wonderful to hear a leader talk about how important change is. You know, one of the things that I do want to connect on that he talked about a lot was it kind of went a little bit in two different directions. Some of what I heard, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, was around managing change, your change and how you're going through change as an individual. In fact, that field guide that he's talking about talks more about personal change and managing that and dealing with change yourself, right? I'm talking about a completely different context in my conversation with you, because I want to talk to you about how you manage change in your organization, change that you're implementing, change that's large scale change, right? And to be honest with you, managing large scale change is even more crucial today than it ever has been before. It's more crucial today than it ever has been before. Because can anybody tell me how many change initiatives, how many change initiatives fail to achieve their intended results? Does anybody have an idea of what percentage fails to achieve the intended results?
95%.
I didn't, what was that, 90%? Okay, it's a little bit less.
Wow. Maybe over 50.
It is over 50. It's at 70%. So it's in between the two of you, right? So who can tell me what you think the estimated cost is if you think broadly across the world or even across the United States, if 70% of change initiatives fail to achieve their intended results, what do you think the cost associated with that is?
Significant.
Think it's in the millions, in the billions, in the trillions?
It's huge.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, Matt, yeah.
So let me give you a couple of anecdotal things here. So McKinsey and the University of Oxford did some research. IT projects alone, which is over $15 million investment here in the United States, they found that they average 45% over budget and deliver 56% less than the value that they predicted. Think about that. 1 in 6 IT projects can have a cost overrun of 200%, with some extreme cases at 700% overrun on budget. Okay, here's a really, really big one. And I don't remember what CISQ is, so don't ask me. The CISQ report in 2020 estimated, and that's 2020, so we're 5 years from this date, right? Estimated the total cost of unsuccessful development projects among US firms was $260 billion.
That's a big number.
That's a big number. That's a big number. So yeah, you know, the cost of not managing change is significant. Not managing change effectively is significant. And to be quite honest with you, in my opinion, the industry that probably struggles the most is the construction industry. I don't know if any of you have dealt with the construction industry in any way, shape, or form, but you know, a lot of this research is around the IT industry, but I think the construction industry has got you guys beat. But I wanted to emphasize this because it really plays a significant impact on what I'm trying to get across to you, right? So what I'm trying to emphasize is the business case for change management, right? So, and then I'm also going to talk to you about a model, right? So Scott talked about the Kotter 8-step model. I do want to clarify that there's 2 interpretations of the Kotter 8-step model that you'll find out on the internet. So there's Kotter's actual 8-step model, and then there's an adaptation of that 8-step model it's aligned. So it basically gives you the same message, but the titles in that model are a little bit different. You're going to see in my presentation the actual Kotter model, not the adaptation, which is what you saw in Scott's slide. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand that even though it looks different, it's exactly the same. It's just the words were adapted to be more what businesses might more commonly see in the adapted version. Okay. Any questions about that before we move forward? All right. So someone finish this sentence for me. Change is blank. How would you finish that sentence for me?
Inevitable.
Inevitable. Beautiful. What else? Change is
Constant.
constant. Change is
Necessary.
hard. Yeah. Change is
Met with resistance.
yes, met with resistance. All great answers. And we're going to touch on every single one of them as we move forward. Let me just talk about what change is. And I like this definition because it's a really simple definition. But change is any transition or alteration in organization strategy, structure, processes, culture, or operations in order to achieve a desired future result. So that's what change is. And you have to consider the size of the change, right? So there's large scale change, and then there's a small scale change, right? So small scale, if it affects, a few people, not the end of the world. Even a department may be considered a small scale change, depending on the size of the department. Department is 1,000 people, it's a lot larger, right? But large scale change, we're talking about the impact in an organization. And an organization like Bank of America, we're going through a large scale change right now. We're implementing Microsoft 365, and that's impacting 210,000 people across all continents in the world, right? Very large scale change. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to reference that a lot. And then I'm going to talk about another change, a smaller scale change that's really focusing on two sides of the academy that are merging together. So it's impacting about 150 people, still decent sized change, but my academy is merging with another academy, and we're going to be under new leadership. So I'm going to reference both, and I'm going to show you some examples about how the Kotter model works across that. But before we get into that, the other things that I want you to consider when you're thinking about change, especially large-scale change, whether it's driving any of those elements that we just talked about, is what's the risk associated with that change, right? So is it safe to say that it's a higher risk change when there's a lot more people, like 200,000 people impacted, right? Versus, having a change with a small department of potentially about 100, 150 people. So the risk associated with the change is important as well. Does the risk significantly change the work, right? Is the risk associated with a significant change in the work? Those are the things that I want you to think about. But then this is another model. It's called the STAR model. Now, the purpose of the STAR model is not a change management approach. The STAR model is about how you think about making changes to key areas in your business. So if you change your processes, there are implications to that change with regards to how you're going to reward people, how you might organize the structure of the organization, how you might have to upskill people or change their mindsets. And then obviously it's probably going to have an impact on your strategy, potentially, right? So the idea of the STAR model is to consider all these 5 areas of your business as you are implementing a change. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about a change in strategy, what are the implications to the other 4 areas? If you're thinking about doing an org design change, how does that organizational design impact, which is your structure, how does that impact the other 4 components of this model? That's critically important as we walk through the Kotter model, because the Kotter model doesn't reference these elements because they're assuming that you're thinking about those components, right? So there are some assumptions with the Kotter model, and I want you to be cognizant of this. All right, so the next thing I want to touch on is I want to get your thoughts. What do you think makes change hard? What if you're managing change? What's the hardest thing about managing change?
Getting people to adopt the change.
Yeah, people. People is the hardest part about change. So there are 9 reasons that I want to share with you why change fails. Reason number 1, employee resistance. Now you're probably saying to yourself, and I put these in my order of importance, by the way. This is based on my experience. You might be saying, John, what the heck are you thinking about employee resistance being the bottom? I'm going to tell you why as we go through the rest of this. Okay. But employees resistance is a big reason why change fails. Lack of accountability. So if you don't have any accountability to adopt the change, good example, we're moving to Microsoft 365, right? The first step that we're taking is moving to Teams and OneDrive, right? For those of you who use Teams and OneDrive, those two kind of go together, right? They work hand in hand, right? So how we implement this change, if there's no accountability to stop using Skype, to stop using WebEx, to stop using the other tools that they have, there's no consequence, no accountability. It's really not going to make a difference, right? Okay. Bad systems and tools. If Teams and OneDrive was the worst solution in the world, man, and it's not, by the way, for those of you that know it, I think it's pretty amazing. But if it was, man, that's a bad decision. And we pretty much put the business in danger, right? Fair? Right? Okay. Project confusion. So the project team isn't really sure, right? There's confusion with regards to what we're trying to accomplish within the project team. Inadequate capacity. Did anybody experience this before? Right? There's not enough capacity to really drive the change, and or there's not capacity to receive the change in the business. So I want you to think of that in 2 contexts, right? Can the business absorb this change? Are there other things going on in the organization, or is it just this one change that we're implementing? So it makes a difference, right? So it's the capacity to receive the change, but it's also the capacity to actually drive the change and execute the change. No or poor communication. And I want to extend this to also overextending the use of electronic communication for communication. So not doing live in-person communication, having that opportunity to have 2-way conversation is a huge miss and is part of what I'm talking about when I say poor communication. Unhealthy culture. Scott talked about that, right? Right? The culture is so critical to be able to absorb the change, right? So if you have an unhealthy culture, that might be what's driving that employee resistance, right? Management alignment. If alignment doesn't exist at the management level and people are hearing from the chief financial officer that Teams is not really going to work, so keep using Skype, and then the chief human resource officer is saying Teams is the best thing since sliced bread, let's adopt it, let's move it. I mean, that's just sending different messages, and that lack of alignment really suffers, it really makes the change suffer significantly. Number 1 reason, in my opinion, why change fails is lack of leadership support, lack of leadership sponsorship. Employee resistance is enabled when leadership is not driving the change. Employee resistance is enabled when there's lack of management alignment. And I can go down the line with every single one of these things here as to why employee resistance is a problem. Yeah. Because an unhealthy culture will drive employee resistance, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So I think these are important for you to be aware of. So the $1 million question is, what do we do about it? Well, there's another model that Scott referenced earlier, and it's the Kubler-Ross change curve, right? So this change curve is what people experience, what you experience when a change happens to you, right? So I recently it was announced that I was going to be moving from my executive that I reported to to a new academy executive. So I'm moving over from Amy Vitale to Lisa Harrington. Now, when I got the news, I was in shock. First of all, I didn't get the news the proper way. So I was even more shocked because I found out from somebody else, and it was a business announcement. And because the business was changing, the academy needed to change. And the news was shared much sooner with me than my boss. My boss, by the way, didn't know either. So I was in shock. I was in denial. I was resisting the change because my first reaction was, can we stay with you at least till the end of the year, Amy, and then move to Lisa's organization at the end of the year? I was resisting change, right? I woke up quickly because I realized this is the wrong thing to do because my behavior is not going to enable that change to happen. But this is what happens. People go through this change, but what we need people to do, and by the way, the message in the middle is, the goal of change management is to reduce that downward curve, because you're not going to eliminate the fact that people are going to be in shock. People might have some level of denial and some level of resistance and frustration. It's going to happen. But some people might get over it quicker, others may not, right? But your job as a change manager is to manage that downward cycle, and communication is key to drive that. So what do we do in order to make that happen? Well, so getting back to my message around the scale of the change makes it more challenging, right? So the more people there are associated with the change, the more risk is associated with the change, the more challenging it's going to be to manage it. So that's important to understand. But what I want you to think about is what you need to focus on as a change leader. So I use the term change leader deliberately, because as a change manager, you're managing the process of change, but you need to simultaneously be a change leader. And that's where you're focusing on the people. You're focusing on that downward cycle that people are going through when they're going through change. And you have to focus on it by focusing on those things that will help adoption. Now, what we do is we generally focus on awareness, application, and adoption. So we expect by notifying people that there's a change, educating them with it, and then focusing on how they should be applying it, and then holding them accountable to it by driving some metrics and things, we're going to achieve adoption. But the primary thing that we miss when we try to manage change is acceptance. We assume, because look at that policy statement that he showed as an example. Everybody is going to go to 4 days a week starting X date, right? We assume just because there's a policy and there's awareness that we give them, that they're going to adopt and they're going to make it happen. I don't know about you guys, but we changed that here at Bank of America, and we still can't get people to come in 3 days a week. Okay? So acceptance is the component that most leaders miss when they manage change. And that's the piece, notice the alignment. Where's acceptance aligned to with regards to the Kubler-Ross change curve? Directly associated with denial, resistance, and frustration. Mm-hmm. That's because we're not doing a good enough job selling the change. Everybody tracking with me?
So John, in that same vein, a lot of that acceptance piece is people are asking the question, what's in it for them? And that's to your point. You really have to communicate and talk to folks such that you really understand what is in it for them and how are they thinking about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this goes for small scale change. You want to make a change in your team, your immediate team, you have 10, 15 people reporting to you. If you want to make a change, you say, hey, you know what? I want everybody to send me your time away from work, your vacation. Send me a calendar invitation so I have it on my calendar when you're going to be away. Right? So let's say you're just doing that. Why you're doing that? Why that's going to be a benefit to that individual? That's the acceptance piece that we miss. So if you wonder why people aren't putting their vacation on your calendar when you ask them to, more than likely they don't understand the buy-in piece. They don't understand the why, right? You just made them aware. You just gave them an understanding of what it is that is going to happen. But you really didn't tell them why they needed to buy into that, why it's important to them. That's the key component of this. Okay. All right. So the key to success is really then how we manage and lead change. So change management is, and I like this definition also, it's a structured approach that guides individuals and teams through transitions and effectively. So how we guide people through it, right? Because we can't force people to adopt things, right? We got to guide them through it. We got to lead them through the change. So how we do that is important. And the reasons why change management is so important are the things that you see around that graphic there, right? If you're going to stay competitive, think about the millions of dollars lost, the trillions of dollars lost more broadly in failed change initiatives that failed to meet their objectives, right? That's a lot of loss. So think about the amount of loss that's occurring right now in your organization, right? So staying competitive, improving performance, developing the workforce, because you want to develop your team to be nimble. Change management equals nimbleness for your organization, right? That's where adaptability comes in, innovation, employee engagement rises when you do change management better, right? All these are the reasons why change management is so important. And then for going back to our initial start to the conversation, reducing waste, improving the return on investment of that change initiative. Those are additional reasons why change management is so important, right? So the key message that I want to leave you with here is that managing change effectively requires a deliberate focus and approach. So what I'm saying is you have to get really good at change management. You, your team members, your organization, it's got to become part of your DNA in your organization. And you'll see that things will get significantly better. You'll yield more significant results as a result of doing change management effectively. And I have to say, we're not perfect as an organization. Bank of America is not perfect. And I know this is being recorded, so please don't share that with Brian Moynihan. But Bank of America does change management exceptionally well. We actually have a change management organization. And for every single change that we propose to do in the organization, we have to do an impact analysis of that organization to see a material analysis of that change. So we understand how much of an impact that change is going to have in the organization, to see if it goes through a more structured change process. If it doesn't meet the materiality requirements, then it'll go through a less rigorous change process. But regardless, it's going to go through a change process. We manage change effectively, but regardless of that, we still miss things. And I'm going to talk to you about Microsoft 365 as a big miss for us as we move forward. Okay. Checklist of things that you need to do in order to be successful. Minimize resistance, kind of no-brainer. Maximize engagement. Get people involved. Manage expectations. This is the communication piece. And you gotta understand, you have, in our case, we have 210,000 people in our audience for Microsoft 365 implementation. How are we going to manage expectations across that? We got to develop personas. We've got to look at ways to bucket it. So those are the things that are important. Resource and project the change appropriately, and all these things. I mean, these are things that you're probably familiar with if you've gone through any kind of project management training. If you're project management certified, a lot of these things are associated with that, because project management is all about change management as well. Okay, I'm trying to go a little bit faster because I'm noticing the time. So this is Kotter's model. This is the actual graphic from the Kotter website. And I want to recognize that this is Kotter's model. So it starts where the star is, right? Which is to create that sense of urgency. And I'm going to go through the entire model as we go through this process, right? What I want to do is I really want to emphasize the importance of each step in this model. And as Scott mentioned, it's a process. It's not a procedure, right? But there's value in going through the process the way it's outlined here. So going from creating that sense of urgency to building the coalition, to forming that vision, to enlisting the volunteer army, all the way around to instituting the change. All that is critically important to follow this model. And I'm going to show you an example of how it's impacted a significant change initiative at Bank of America. So first one, create a sense of urgency. Pretty straightforward. The key thing is, what I want you to think about is you're not creating the sense of urgency for the entire organization at first. The purpose of this step is to create that sense of urgency for those stakeholders, those key stakeholders that you need to make sure buy into this, right? So clearly we made a decision as a business, and let me go into this first before I go into the example. The keys to success is really identifying what that sense of urgency is and communicating it, right? So what's that need for change? Really making sure you're engaging the right stakeholders. And I didn't put down the right stakeholders, I put key stakeholders, but it's really important that it's the right stakeholders, right? And then the key thing here, and this one is probably the most important thing, is be careful with complacency. If you start a sense of urgency, if you wait 4, 8, 10 weeks to finally do something because you've gotten the key stakeholders bought into it, that change is going to fail. That change is going to fail. You have to, as soon as you get that buy-in from those key stakeholders, you've got to now drive things fast. You need to keep momentum. And we're going to continue to talk about momentum throughout the 8-step model. So M365. We sold somebody on M365. Clearly, the senior leader, our CEO, was sold on it, and we are investing millions, probably getting close to $500 million plus in an investment in just the solutions for M365 and everything that goes with it in regards to the costs associated with the disruption in business and everything, right? So the challenge with it is that they felt that the key people to buy off on this were just a few key leaders in the organization. The other key leaders in the organization were not aware that we were driving this until they were informed that Microsoft 365 is going to be installed in their businesses.
Yep.
There was no sense of urgency around this, and there was a lot of pushback around this. Now, here's the dilemma. The schedule showed that Teams and OneDrive had to be installed by September of this year. This initiative started we were starting the implementation in Q4 last year. So think about it, 1 year to drive this across 210,000 people, across 8 lines of businesses, across, I can't even tell you how many countries, right? The sense of urgency was not built with the right stakeholders. They identified a few key stakeholders, but not all the right stakeholders, and that's where that opportunity, it's created a challenge, right? Okay, contrast that to what we're doing with the integration with the Credit Assistance Academy. So remember, I went through that downward cycle really quickly, and I woke up and I smelled the coffee. I said, you know what? I can't delay this. I can't delay this change. So I went immediately to my new boss and I said, listen, we've got to do this. We've got to do this fast. We've got to do this quick. And here's the big problem. Our academy in the consumer business runs completely different than your academy does in global operations. And you have pockets of your academy that tries to mimic what we did in consumer, but it's really different. So we need to decide what kind of academy we want to be, right? we can't continue to operate our academies differently because it's not going to be conducive to running an effective academy. And you're running a business. You're running a business. You're running an academy, which is a business within a business. And we are supporting a line of business where the feedback has not been positive so far. And I learned about this through, talking with some of my peers within her academy. And she knows that the feedback from the lines of business that she supports is not positive. I created that sense of urgency, but I didn't stop there. I then went to talk to my peers that report to her and let them know the same thing. And then collectively we talked together and we said, yep, we've got to move forward. We've got to think about our strategy. We've got to think about our processes. We've got to think about our people. We've got to think about our organization structure. And we've got to think about our reward system. We got to think about all aspects of what it is that we're going to be doing as we move forward. So we immediately created that sense of urgency. And I got to tell you, we're now 3 months into the change, and the change process is going exceptionally well. Zero disruption to my team, who's the one that's impacted the most by the change. Zero disruption so far, knock on wood. We're doing a very good job of managing change, and we'll talk more about it as we go through the 8-step model. Okay, step number 2, build a strong coalition. So needless to say, their coalition was just the IT people, right? They felt that was the coalition they needed to build, right? And when we're talking about building a strong coalition, we need a diverse group of people to really help drive this change. And I don't mean diverse in the sense of diversity where I'm Hispanic, Latino, Everett's an African American, some folks on the call like AJ, you're a white American. I'm not talking about that kind of diversity. I'm talking about people in the line of business, people in control functions, people in IT, right? I'm talking about all levels in the organization, because if you only have a coalition of just the senior leaders in the organization, are they really going to drive the change? No, they're the executive sponsors of the change, right? We need people that are somewhat feet on the street that are going to show people, I'm doing this, right? I'm living this and I'm making this happen, right? Okay, so keys to success, you see them there, right? So making sure you have the right team with diverse perspectives. You want to make sure there's clear understanding roles, responsibilities. You want to make sure there's team cohesion. This is huge. So we don't talk about teamwork when it comes to a change initiative because most of the times it gets ignored, right? So think about your project team. How many times have you brought a cross-functional team and done a team building activity with that project team to kick off the team, to help the team members understand each other better, to understand what they're bringing to the table? Team cohesion for that coalition that you're bringing together is so critical, because for the next year from when that initiative, actually the initiative started like 2 years before we said we were going to start implementing. But for 2 years, we missed the opportunity. But from that moment that we said we're going to move forward with M365, we should have been focusing on getting that team working really well together, right? Team cohesion is critical. And then full commitment is the goal. And now Everett said something extremely important, and I didn't interrupt him when he said it before. It's not about full agreement, right? We can't afford to wait till 210,000 people agree that Microsoft Teams is the right solution for us to replace WebEx and Skype. Can't afford that, right? But we need full agreement that we will support this initiative. If anybody is saying that they won't support this initiative, what do you have? You have resistance, right? So the goal is to get to full commitment. Full commitment means you've got everybody agreeing to support this decision. It has to start with the coalition that you've pulled together. If that coalition is not out there promoting things and actively supporting the decisions that that team is making, this project is doomed for failure. Or at least not meeting all the intended objectives. Okay? Okay. Microsoft 365, we were slow to get adoption for a coalition. We actually, like I said, we didn't start full implementation until Q3. It's a failure on our part here. We're just building that coalition. We started building that coalition a month ago. Think about that. We're trying to drive full implementation of Teams and OneDrive by the end of September, and we just built that full coalition a month ago, and we need to implement it across 210,000 people in our organization. Anybody want to come and work with me on this project? I could use all the help I can get. Okay. Contrast that to what we did with the Academy integration. I pulled that team together immediately. I made sure my leader was aware that we were going to do this. She was supportive. I brought in my peers, and I asked my peers, who from your teams are the critical ones that are going to help us drive this change so we can transition successfully? And we've been having meetings since a month before the actual announcement went out to the organization that we were moving over to the Global Operations Academy. Okay. You have to do that. And that's what this step is so critical in the process. Okay.
John, let me just add to that, because that whole context of what John is just referencing is contemplation and pre-contemplation. Really sitting down and thinking about, who do I need on board? Who can be influential? That word is so critical, that can influence others. Because everybody's going to go through, I love how John shared that he went through his own emotional move when he heard about the change.
Yep.
And people have to be able to go through that. But then he came on the other side so he can influence. It is so important to think about who those folks are and to get that coalition put together early, is John's point.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to think beyond just the group that's going to lead the initiative, which unfortunately is what our IT team did not do. They only thought about the IT group that was driving this initiative. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm going to pick up my pace a little bit. So, form a strategic vision. You all know the idea is, what's that compelling message? So, number one key to success, it's got to be a clear message. We have no idea why we're moving to Teams and moving to OneDrive. It's really cool. Don't get me wrong. It's a really cool tool, and we want to be, at the cutting edge and leading edge with regards to solutions that we're giving our teammates within the organization. But how cutting edge are we when Teams and OneDrive has been around for what, 5-6 years, right? And we're just getting around to implementing it. So why are we doing it? That's critical. That's important. And when we started these meetings a month ago, that's the first message I started asking. What's the message? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Right? It can't be just because we decided to move away from Skype. There's a more compelling reason, right? So they haven't even finished that reason, and we already started implementing, but we're getting that explanation and getting a clear statement. In fact, they're going to be revealing it to us. Actually, Friday, there's a meeting with all of the champions that we're going to be that are part of that coalition that I was talking about, and we're going to talk about what that clear message is. Right? Clear message is critical for us. What was my clear message? What was the compelling message for us, based on what I shared with Lisa? Does anybody remember? We have two fundamentally different academies in how we run. I can't come into your academy and just adopt everything you're doing, because you'll completely mess up how I run my academy. So we have to make some important decisions around how we are going to work together going forward. What are some things that you might adopt from what we did? What are some things that I need to adopt from what you did? And what's that model going to look like going forward? Because if we don't, one of us, my team will fail if you force me to use what you guys currently have in place, because you can't support what we do. Right? So that's the compelling reason. We have two fundamentally different models, and we need to come up with one, right? Okay, enlist the volunteer army. So at this point, now you're trying to broaden that coalition, right? So now for us, we're now looking for LOB champions because we're moving fast. So we created the coalition, we're working with the coalition, but now we've asked the coalition, who are your line of business champions throughout the organization, right? Who are those people that are going to help us drive this change more broadly, right? So we have a lot of line of businesses. So this army is going to be an army. This is going to be like about 100 plus people that are in this coalition, and we can't stop there because we got to drive that even further, right? Each of those champions. So my champion for my business, I'm already talking to her about the fact that we need champions at the subline of business level, right? We have to expand that army, right? And the key to success here is keeping that army constantly informed about what's going on. Because what we don't need is that army telling people the wrong thing and then hearing something different from senior leaders, right? Communication is instrumental at this stage of the process, okay? And then the other thing that's critically important is when you enlist this army, make sure you're enlisting the right people. People that are fast adopters, people that you know are going to help drive the change and make the change a reality, that have some level of knowledge experience. They're probably using teams on their own if we're going to bring people into this army that we're trying to build, right? So we're in the process of doing that. For us, we enlisted all of our academy managers, our facilitators. We went to everybody. It's a smaller group, right? So we literally have all 150 people engaged in this change process right now because we want feedback. As they hear something new, we want feedback immediately, and they're engaged in the process. But we're in a different stage because it's a smaller scale than the large scale that's happening with the Bank of America M365 implementation. Okay, enable action by removing barriers. You all know as leaders, you have to remove barriers constantly. It's critically important with regards to a change effort, right? You've got to do a good job. I mean, it's an obvious key to success, but you have to do a good job at identifying barriers. You can't wait for a barrier to be presented to you, right? How many of you ever taken Six Sigma training? Anybody familiar with Six Sigma? All right, so I won't dive in too deep into this, but in Six Sigma, they teach you to do a failure modes and effect analysis. You want to do an FMEA, failure modes and effect analysis, early on, so you understand where those potential failures are, where are those barriers potentially going to exist. So you want to be proactive about identifying where those barriers might exist, right? And one significant barrier that they didn't think about is over in Asia Pacific for Microsoft 365. Asia Pacific has policies in some countries that we can't go this fast. So now we're burdened. Now we're asking Microsoft, could we extend Skype to the end of the year so we can manage the change more effectively in Asia Pacific? We don't know if Microsoft's going to do that for us, because I don't know if anybody saw the announcement in the Wall Street Journal. Microsoft already announced that Skype's going away in October, right? You've got to be proactive in looking at barriers. Address resource limitations. These are all different barriers, by the way. Support employees through the transition, because employees, that resistance is going to come up if you're not supporting them through the transition and really engaging them through the process. Like I told you, with us, we engaged every single person in the academy, right? We have to empower our folks to make some decisions. They're involved. I have people within the front lines for my team that are involved in decisions around the work management system that we're going to be creating. That's combining what's done in global operations and what we did in Consumer Academy. I need to get that buy-in quickly, because if we try to do it at the senior leader level and we tell them this is what you're going to use, you guys know there's going to be resistance, a lot of resistance. So I need the people on the front lines contributing to what that system looks like, right? And we got to constantly looking at conflicts and reviewing conflicts to really enable the teams to continue to work and drive results. Removing barriers is really important, but remember, if you're gonna be in reactive mode, you're gonna struggle with managing the change. You're gonna have to react to some barriers that come up. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But don't try to wait for every single barrier to be presented to you. Be proactive about looking for where there are potential barriers. Okay, next step is to generate short-term wins. You gotta leverage those wins, right? Look for those opportunities, but what's the most important thing about short-term wins? Is it actually achieving the win? What do you think is most important?
Sharing it out and celebrating it.
Yeah, sharing it, letting people know, getting it out there, right? You got to identify those early successes, and then you got to use those wins for momentum. And the way you're going to use it for momentum is sharing it with people, right? That's the way you're going to reinforce the change. One of the ways you're going to reinforce the change, right? And don't forget to recognize who's contributing to those quick wins, because you want those people to continue to bring more quick wins, right? Okay. With the M365 change, a lot of short-term wins were achieved because we did some pilot groups, but nothing was shared. Nothing was shared with anybody other than the pilot groups and the IT organization, right? You have to share it more broadly. For us, we do a monthly newsletter. In addition, whenever there's an immediate win, we make sure that that win is cascaded down to through every leader, right? But that monthly newsletter is sharing wins, and it's specific just to our academy. So it's not going broader than us because it's not impacting anybody else. But every single person, all 150 people, are hearing about that change. Okay, so sustaining acceleration. You got to build off those short-term wins. You got to use those short-term wins for momentum, and you got to piece those short-term wins together. If you're not doing that, you're not going to accelerate this change and the momentum that you've gained with some of those wins, right? So it's like going back to my message when I first talked about you getting that buy-in from those key stakeholders. If you wait too long to start taking action, you're gonna lose momentum. It's the same thing. You got to leverage those wins. You got to keep moving forward with those wins. The main message here is that third bullet: prevent regression. Because what if we don't push hard with talking it up about teams and the utilization of teams? What if we don't drive that fast? What are people going to start doing? They're going to keep using Skype, right? And if we extend Skype all the way down to December, they're going to even use it even more and not have to worry about changing until it gets turned off. And that's not helping us at all, right? Because there's a lot of things that they can leverage using Teams that Skype doesn't have. And there's a lot of efficiencies. And one big thing is obviously telephony and costs in telephony and WebEx costs also. I mean, the cost comparative between WebEx and Teams is pretty significant. Okay. Let me go to the next one. Instituting the change. This is where it's, how are we making this part of the DNA of your organization? How are we making it part of the culture? So part of that is accountability systems. Right now, Microsoft has an accountability system for us. They're going to turn off Skype. So at some point, everybody's going to have to use Teams. However, there are other ways to drive accountability, right? So, you know, we've got to coach our managers that when someone IMs us with Skype, we don't respond to their request. We say, if you want my response, you need to send it to me in Teams. Simple little things like that to make it part of the culture, to start driving people to that new behavior is critical, right? I don't want you to wait until step 8 to do that though, okay? I want you to be thinking about how do you institute the change throughout the change management process, okay? What you need to do is you need to reinforce it and drive it further in step 8, but you should be thinking about how you're going to drive adoption throughout the process of this change, throughout all 8 steps. Okay. I'm going to close this out because I want to give us time to have some questions, to have a little bit of discussion, right? Especially as you think about your projects when you're going to do your work. Remind me who the City of Refuge is you're doing it with, right? Yeah. So as you think about your projects, I want you to think about not only the initiative that you're recommending that they implement, right? But when you make your recommendation, think about the change implications, right? Think about all those 5 components that I talked about. So what's being impacted in the City of Refuge with the recommendation that you're driving? Is it a broad initiative where it's impacting all of the City of Refuge? Is it a small part of the City of Refuge? Right? So you need to think about the change implications, and in your recommendation, bring up how the change should be managed in order for that to be successful. I never make a recommendation to do something without thinking about my leader, explaining to my leader how I think the change should actually be managed. So that the first day I talked to Lisa about what it is that I think we needed to do in order to merge our 2 academies, I told her I need to form that coalition. I didn't use those words, right? Because that's not common language that we use, but I told her we need to form a team, a change team that's going to help us drive this change. And then I told her from there, I hope you're okay, but I expect everybody to be engaged in this. So I'm already talking about how we're driving that army and bringing in that volunteer army to help us drive the change. I'm already steps ahead in how I'm making this recommendation in order to help drive the change and help sell the change, right? Because it's a significant part of that recommendation that you're making. All right. So in conclusion, the message that I want you to walk away with is number one, first and foremost, have a deliberate focus and approach around change management, right? Don't take it the chance. You can adopt the Kata model. There's other models out there, right? We actually used a adapted version of the Kata model. We don't really go through all 8 steps. We don't communicate all 8 steps, but we incorporate all 8 steps. You can clearly see we incorporate all 8 steps because of the way I shared with you what we're doing with regards to how we're managing the change. But pick a model and make it part of the DNA of the culture. And I'll be honest with you, we have literally a change organization. Their job is to identify what that model is. Their job is to provide the tools, the project management tool, everything around it. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different story. Some of your organizations may not be as large as Bank of America and may not have the funding to be able to do something like that. But somehow make a very deliberate attempt to formalize how you do change in your organization. Foster successful transformations. You want to adhere to that model. You want to navigate the change using that model. You really want to focus on both the people side, right? Minimizing resistance and maximizing engagement. That's instrumental, right? The process is the project management piece. The people side is the change leader piece. That's where you have to focus a lot of your attention. And then really, like any other process improvement, you have to sustain the gains. Right? It's not enough to, check the box that you implemented the change and everybody got teams in the organization. What were our expected gains, and did we sustain those gains? Did we return that to the bottom line in the organization? Okay, I'll stop there. Any questions, comments, thoughts, reactions? We've got, I don't know, 5 minutes. I don't know, Everett, if you have anything you wanted to cover.
Yeah, a couple comments right at the end. So questions, comments, guys, jump in. What do you like? What do you wish? What do you wonder? You know my favorite.
I like that. I heard that before. I'm gonna steal that.
Well, it was really comprehensive, a lot to take in at once. So I'm not surprised that we're pretty silent. I think everybody's thinking.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Process.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate everything. That was, again, comprehensive and well done, eye-opening.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, Everett, do you remember? I went through the Cotter change program like 20 years ago. I think it's like a 3-day program, right?
Yep, it is.
So it's pretty significant. So take it with a grain of salt that you just learned about it in less than an hour.
Well, and one of the things I like in it is ultimately, and John said this just a few minutes ago, it's effective leaders of change really know what to do, which is kind of the stuff, the tasks, the understanding the task view, the models, but then the how to be, because it's that whole relationship side that he was getting at. So it's knowing what to do, but how to be, because how you show up. Yep. It doesn't mean that you're immediately, I love John's example. He didn't just jump on the change. He was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the work. That's where he was, but he had to then become aware of where he was and then deal with his own emotions first as a leader and then take action. And so just be aware that we're dealing with people. And notice what he said, 75% of these things fail, 75, because of people.
Yeah.
And so the key is to take people where they are. And as a leader, you got to get yourself in check first, and then you can actually help others. Because if I'm poo-pooing the change, I'm not helping anybody by poo-pooing. That's not how I'm going to.
And I overlooked one thing. Look at the reasons why change fails. Tell me what the items in bold have in common.
They all impact people, have an effect on people.
They're all people related.
People related.
7 out of the 9 reasons changes fail is people related issues.
Yeah. So as John said, as you're thinking about your presentations or your pitches for City of Refuge, really give that some thought, because understand what you're talking about doing in most cases is impacting people. So it's the people. So how do you contemplate how they'll respond, what concerns they'll have? How do you contemplate that and frame that in the context of your pitch, and how they can actually, because it's real. And how can they actually, how can what you're doing support, what offers can you make to support helping to move people along the change continuum?
How do you learn about the culture of City of Refuge?
Yeah.
You gotta take the time to spend. Yeah, I don't know if you have what access you have to them, but if you can talk to them, research it, look on any public announcements that have been made regarding the organization. Go on to Glassdoor, see what people say about the City of Refuge. There's a lot of ways to find out about the culture, to understand how receptive that culture is going to be to the initiative that you're recommending.
All right. Well, first of all, let me just say, John, thank you so much for stepping in. We really appreciate it. And team, thank you for your engagement and attention tonight. As I said, we are coming down the home stretch. So next month, I'm not going to worry about trying to put the slide up because that'll take me 2 minutes to get the slide up. Next month, August is really about, I'm going to send you a couple of little blurbs out. You know me, I'm always sending you a little bit of pre-work as we get ready for August, where our focus really will be pitching for ourselves such that we really get great feedback and get ourselves all queued up for the September session, which of course will be pitching to City of Refuge and getting their input, et cetera. And graduation. Isn't that an amazing thing? We're coming up on, it's been a year coming up. So thank you so much for your time and attention. Any other comments, anything anybody wants to say before we step out? I'm going to go head off and ride a horse again tonight.
Well, I want to say congratulations to all of you for getting this far in the program. It's very exciting.
It is. All
Thanks,
right,
John.
Chief.
Thanks, Everett.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the baseball game.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
guys.
all.
Have a
Good night.
Cheers. Hold on. Hey, Evelyn.
Hey, have a good night.
All right. Just wanted to make sure we were all set. So good job. Thank you for your help.
You're
this
welcome. Man, I had it all queued up too, waiting for just to press that button to open all the
know,
rooms.
when I saw their